An Minden video. Yeah, there's been a lot of videos I wanted to make. There's little comments here and there and stuff, but just haven't done it. And it's probably not important, and so it's probably one of the reasons not to do it. But anyway, so anyway, there's a lot of people talking about red, black pills, red pills, blue pills. And they're doing this somehow this metaphor from the Matrix that doesn't really make any sense anyway, because the Matrix was such a fake duality, between reality, the real life, and the fake life, because the fake life was shit, where the fake life could be not shit, and then it would be a real contest. And even when the fake life isn't not shit, obviously the real life was shittier. So in every respect, there was nothing appealing about it. Even if you weren't in the war, and you just lived in the underground hovel, having dance night or whatever, it was still a pretty grisly place to live. So, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I certainly wouldn't be one to say be a fanatic about red pilling, But anyway, they use it as a metaphor for, like, you don't know the real truth, you don't know the real world, and that comes up in this whole context of a Hitler movie, which makes it all even funnier, or weirdest, or strange. So I guess there's a movie called the documentary, the Greatest Story Never Told, and some asshole asked, isn't Mendham red-pilled? As if... it's 6 hours long, so I haven't watched all of it yet. It's very well made. It's very, whatever. But it's just kind of funny to just, yes, let's look at the world from Hitler's point of view. But I suppose it's a fair enough thing to do. Everybody should look at everything from everyone's point of view if they have the time. Seems only fair, in a way, is to, do as much as you can with your imagination in terms of getting that. The interesting thing is this Robin Evans guy is arguing with these guys over communism versus National Socialism, I guess, versus a kind of capitalism, really, right? The Robin guy makes a lot of good arguments in defense of communism, which is kind of funny. He's good. I mean, has lots of documentation, lots of stuff to defend, even the bad guys, Stalin and stuff. So from that point of view, so from particular points of view and by certain statistics, you can measure value. But the lesson I take away from most of it is just the idea of just we've never tested any kind of civilization because we've never lived in times where you weren't wasting, men or money in some insane way. And that seems like that's all there is, is just, I've also made the argument that capitalism would be pretty benign as a economic system if you just took away the inheritance part. The inheritance is what makes it all bad. It's like monarchy would be just fine if they couldn't inherit it. You had to earn it. And yeah, it's just that's the way it is. It just to me that's the instant fix for greed and selfishness is just don't make it so it's inheritable.
Could be a new post.
I haven't heard one of those in a while. Anyway. It's probably nonsense, no doubt. So anyway, that's just a whole bunch of comments. I just thought some of that would be worth going through, but I probably should watch the whole documentary first. There's some stuff you learn that you didn't know. I mean, but generally speaking, it's just a way of presenting it, I guess. It hasn't gotten to the whole final solution part. I don't know if you can really fix that anyway. I've said it before. I mean, Nazis were fairly efficient at creating, clean, motivated people, which is a good thing. And so there's a lot of good to it. But I mean, burning books and overt and disgusting bigotry just don't work. I mean, that's just too fucking stupid. So if you have to burn books and pointlessly hate people for the genetics of their blood, uh, yeah, sorry. I just can't win with that. But anyway, but I do better understand why I never really quite understood why people found Hitler charming, because he just doesn't seem very compelling. But thinking about it in the context of the horrible depression after World War I and how bad things really were, um, yeah, you can start to understand if somebody saved you from that, and also just sort of made everything happen. All kinds of good things happen. you know, I guess as you could see it. But anyway, that's a whole separate subject, and like I said, I don't want to. It's just such a dangerous subject, that who wants to get into that mess. And then the whole Stalin thing is just another dangerous subject because people just don't care to think that it's just that everything has to be turned into all capitalists are bad and all communists are bad, and from the two opposite perspectives it has to be this all thing. And I don't think it's as bad as like Muslims. Muslims are worse than both communism and capitalism. So that's what we should all agree on. Muslims are worse. A lot worse. So anyway, but there's other stuff. A couple of assholes always now and then somebody has to make a comment on the circumcision subject, and they're just so fucking fanatical. This whole idea that male circumcision, foreskin is it's the same exact thing as female mutilation. Same thing, identical. It's like, they don't even realize that the anatomy is not in any way comparable, but who cares? Truth smooth. So anyway, that's all kind of interesting stuff. I guess maybe I'll read one of these comments from this asshole called Common Sense, 1776. Just that by itself, the whole American Revolution is another red pill kind of subject. What's the truth of our revolution? Really, wasn't it really just a bunch of noble types who were sick of the king getting all the money? They just wanted the money. They wanted to own the country. And they suckered a bunch of, commoners, into dying for the cause of making them rich. So anyway, so he says it's got a time code in it, which again, I wish people would understand. Using time codes is a nice idea if somebody wants to hear the whole context, but it would be a lot better if you actually quoted. Because I just, really just seems kind of stupid to me, without any kind of quote, any kind of context, to expect people to go jumping around because you think there's something relevant. You have relevant to say to it. You have your quote to make it, yet you're going to quote a time code. It's just. So yeah, like you, Gary. So apparently it was something like, I said something like somebody else is unproductive or some other kind of thing like that, and then he says, yeah, like you, Gary. See, without the quote, it's just really pointless. You got into your shithole position by circumstances, and you've probably accomplished little by personal effort. The whole idea of personal effort is, some people have to work just to wake up every day and get anything at all done, and so we're all fighting different demons. We're all stuck in different kinds of glue, and so all of that doesn't mean much as a, whatever your argument is. I mean, clearly I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing that there's clearly a difference between being somebody who's there's both the what you intend to do, and then there's your capacity to do it. And clearly I'm going to argue that we can identify people's intentions, whether they intend to contribute anything and whether they actually do. Yeah, and it's a fair thing to do. Anyway, you only exist to espouse your bullshit and yell at others in your hovel. So again, whether I'm in a hovel or not, does that make a difference? No. Whether my espoused bullshit is bullshit, again, is just your opinion. Who cares? I think everything you believe is bullshit too, so not very insightful. Doesn't mean much as an argument. Your subjective opinion based on no evidence. Alright, anyway, no reasoning, anyway. The idea that you can criticize other people who are more productive than you, I don't know where I did that, just by having a job is astounding. So I don't even, like I said, can't even make sense out of that. But criticisms that are either valid or invalid. Now, again, you're going to judge messengers based on, instead of judging the criticism itself. So, and I think that's just, again, bullshit. It really doesn't matter. I don't have to be a vegetarian to point out, hey, it's wrong to harm animals and eat meat. Really don't. It's an argument. You're supposed to judge the argument, not the person making the argument. But see, it's the people who aren't, who can't win a fair fight, who have to cheat, okay, by distracting and changing the subject to the messenger, not about the messenger. Alright, you think you're superior because you figured out how your principled life purpose are equivalent. So again, nowhere have I commented that I am superior. I merely argued that if you think you want to live a life that's at all admirable in the end, you know, by somebody other than Homer Simpson's judgment, then it's going to have this element of purpose in it, in terms of social. You have to leave the condo better than you got it, and if you're leaving it less than you got it, okay, yeah, you weren't a great human being. You were a lot less than that. That's just, I'm just saying, I think that's a fact. Now, you don't think that's a fact. You don't think you have to earn, you don't have to defend your life. You don't think you have to. You don't have to be minimally efficient. Or you don't have to be sufficiently efficient, as my bullshit philosophy says. So you think the idea of sufficient efficiency, having that standard somewhere, that there's a line, whether you like it or not, you think that's bullshit. Well, I think it's retarded, okay, philosophically retarded, not to understand this is a value game. That's what we're playing. It's a value game. It's like gambling in Las Vegas. Show me the money. It's about the money. Okay, there's winners and losers, and it's easy to figure out which ones are which. And the same thing is actually true about our lives. There's givers and takers, and it's really not that difficult to figure out who's who. So, fucky Yui. But it's living in shit land, doing shit all, going at people who are doing more, but don't have the same principles. Good luck with that. Yes, I think it's really easy to say, like even on any principle, first do no harm, or that, yes, I can demonstrate a comparison and say, yes, it's quite easy for us to do no harm. We really don't have to. Most of the harm we do is for the aggressive end of the greed and the rest of it. You don't have to be an asshole, as big an asshole, let's put it that way. It's really easy to shave buckets full of asshole off of your profile without giving up anything really meaningful. Anyway, good luck with that. Well, I think I've been fairly lucky with it, but whatever. You know, I could just point to somebody who says, "Look, hey, thank you, Gary. You helped me see that there was a lot more to having kids than I thought there was, and so, you know, you spared some victim." It's not anything like that. So I could just point to one of those and say, "Yeah, I win." You know, I prevented another victim being strapped to the gurney for no good reason. So asshole Mengelas like you could, you know, cut them up a bit for your purposes. Anyway, also, despite his anti-sex attitude, so this was, I don't know who this was to. I don't know what the anti-sex attitude thing's about. I would say to Gary that procreational sex is justified. I don't know why you'd say that to me. Like, why would I think non-procreative sex wasn't justified, you crazy person? To relieve tension in this shitty world by that argument. My argument, I guess, to Snake Plisskeness, which this video I don't think is too. No, it isn't. It's in the comments or video of some kind. I don't know what you're talking about. Where would you get the idea? The only sex I was saying, that people have to take responsibility for is when they're involving somebody else in their sex, and they're playing them. They're just using them. That's unkind. Even if it's doing something menial like chasing pussy. So again, if you're doing that dishonestly, then I'm going to sit there and say you suck. If you're using other people's emotions and investing their destiny in your bullshit, then I'd say it's rational to critique that and say, gee, that's not a nice person. A romance would always be better, but people can't always attain that. So again, I don't know where could this idiot construe that I've made a video, arguing against it's all a head game, asshole. I mean, your gratification is right there to grab if you want it, by imagination alone. You don't need any other tools. Everything is an interpretation of reality. It's not reality that you feel. You feel your interpretation of it. And, that's all there is your own bullshit. So if you want to be happy, if you think happy is the important thing, it's not that easy to press the red pill version of it. So anyway, fuck you. Delete that one. That's just crap. Comments that I actually read, I think I have a right to delete just because I don't want to type responses to them. Fuck these assholes. They make these claims that I say something I didn't say. So anyway, the real reason I want to make this video, well, the real purpose of it anyway, well, the thing I wanted to get out of the way. There was a guy who posted a link to some other guy's videos. This guy in the dark seems an interesting enough character, except to see him in a video here with a baby. It's really creepy. But anyway, he sort of reminds me of Carney Zazul, a little bit. Charney. And just the way he looks. I mean, the way he's got kind of a little bit of an accent, a little bit, but whatever. So they were ragging on me somewhere in the comments here, I think, which, isn't unusual. I thought I saw it somewhere. It was in here somewhere, but anyway. Someone's quoting the Bible, John Yin. So these are some of my... it's weird when I see some of my people, hanging out in these other places. I say, yeah, gee, what an asshole. So this is from the Bible. There is no fear in love, but perfect love chasteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. John. Yeah, John's an asshole. Anyway. Fear is the only rational response to the circumstance we're in, frankly. I mean, the fact that we're all not hysterically upset is just evidence of our low character. So that's Gary 1:17. Thou is clueless to the blindness of the glibocracy. You're all so fucking glib. That's the nature of, that's one of our worst, our most vicious tools, the biggest, sharpest, nastiest teeth, the worst venom we have is our capacity to be glib fuckers. So anyway, there's all this support me on Patreon stuff and whatever, but whatever, who cares? So I'll actually try to show some of the video, but it's really dark. But anyway, so he's being philosophical It's philosophizable, and so talking about what it is to be alive somehow in here somewhere. So anyway, I've I've put this off for a couple of weeks. I've had this video loaded and I just never finish it. But anyway, so it's 2 minutes in when he's starting to get to something like, okay, I'm alive and I have this subjective experience, something like that. And then he's going to say something profound about that, I suppose. But we'll find out.
A lot of value you can get from looking at things objectively and scientifically and rationally and all this sort of stuff. I'm not discrediting those things, but when I think...
But, that's always the key thing, right? I'm not discrediting rationality and pointing out how we're all caught up in silly ego games that makes us do silly, stupid, fucked-hearted things, like, strap another victim, in the rickety roller coaster of any fucking thing could happen. But whatever.
About psychology, I like to start from the ground up, and I mean, like, really the ground up, what we're actually dealing with. Like, what's my subjective experience of the world? What is it to be a human being? I'm not really concerned about, what is addiction, what is depression, and what are the biological components of X.
Well, again, you can't really say what it is to be a human being without recognizing the context of your creation as an animal, and clearly the functions, the biological reflexive mechanisms, and then recognizing that some of those reflexes are, 2 million years old, and we're a little smarter than we were 2 million years ago, so maybe we can do a little better than that.
I'm much more concerned about what is it to be human, right? And the first place that I start is to say, okay, well, I have a subjective experience of being an individual in the world. So I feel a sense of self, and I'm in a place. Okay, there's a self, there's a center, and there's a place. And, God knows what I'm doing here. God knows how I got it.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. We do know. So he goes, it just, again, is this, overemphasize the visceral, the loud noise, and just don't pay attention to the symphony that's, just around the corner. You go over there, look, see. You're doing the shock and awe thing. So you're just saying, let's just do the shock and awe thing, and we won't pay any attention to the crap that's really important. All the living things in the forest. You just see the trees, right? Come on, freaking computer.
And God knows what the purpose of it is, but there's a space. Now, most of the space that I'm in is chaos. I don't have an understanding. I don't have a solid grasp, a reliable grasp of what is beyond my kind of conceptual boundaries of what exists in my immediate environment.
Again, it's just silly, right? I mean, through our whole life we ask these questions. Why this? Why there's God? This, that. These are ponderables that you do throughout your life. And if, okay, maybe you don't think there's answers to those questions in the sense that they're not complete enough. We don't get to see exactly why universe happened or something. But clearly you can understand there's more than just your snowflake on the snowball, and that you're kind of oblivious to the hill, the snowball's going down. I mean, no. We see a lot. We can see a lot more than what's happening in our little trivial personal lives.
So we're very limited in the sense of
exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. We're not very limited. We're very capable. That's the whole point of us being separate from all the poor animals that are just trapped in that Borg of feelings and having to be completely owned by them, where we can step right over them and say, oh, I don't like that, but I know not to judge things by the cover. I know the book might be better than the ugly cover, that kind of thing. We can do all of that stuff.
Out there, essentially, there may as well be infinity out there. There's incomprehensible amounts of information that you can learn, and there's a million and one things that you can find out about. There's a billion things that you can do. There's
right.
Just
So it's a huge contradiction. You're just, one minute you say we can't do that, and the next minute you're conceding that you could spend many lifetimes gathering data about function, about the mechanisms that compel, studying psychology, for example, or studying evolution, or studying even the physics. So, there's a ton of context to everything every blink of your eye, so to speak. You can analyze the blinking of your own eyes.
See an absolute ocean of chaos out there.
And again, chaos. So, because what do you think's chaotic? Leaves turning brown and falling off of trees, changing seasons, the moon going around the earth or something. What do you think is chaotic? I mean, clearly there is a, when we were less intelligent, people thought, the sun revolved around the earth. They had a misimpression. Now, I don't know if it's significantly better or improved information. I mean, I don't know whether it really matters whether you think one way or you think the other, because nothing's really at stake. But simple things like understanding the difference between, the fact that you think people think carrots feel, or parameciums, or some other, they think that what we're doing is the same thing as what they're doing because they look like, now and then they can do something reactive, and we say, oh, that's just like what we're doing. And then the other extreme is people can see, a dog dreaming, like sleeping, and obviously having a dream, and they can say, well, those dumb animals don't matter. What they feel doesn't have any importance. My feelings matter. How comfortable I am matters. But I could tear its legs off and it doesn't matter. And I could have it for dinner. It doesn't matter. But you're saying we don't have answers? Oh, sure we do.
And that is basically what this kind of meta space that we're in is. It's this sort of fluctuating sea of chaos. And you see that just from the cycle of the days, the cycle of the years, the cycle of just reality. Just.
I can't. Totally opposite impression. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, where do you get that from? Chaos? How? It's all these reliable mechanisms. Even the worst part. I mean, war, fathom. Yeah, that too. A rain, storm. I mean, it's all kind of reliable. It just keeps just banging us on the head over and over and over again. We keep banging into the same crap. It's the same bag of potatoes, just, rinse and repeat. Come on. Chaos?
Look at the seasons. Look at everything. It's a constant flux. It's this constant, pumping. It's just like your heart, just like everything. It's this cyclical flux. And
yeah,
God knows what that means.
Right, so that you call chaos. The reliability of the heartbeat, is chaos. That's exactly the opposite. It's this thing tested over, 300, 400 billion years, 500 billion years of testing to build one that just is quite reliable and quite dependable and works quite well. And you're calling it chaos. Now I'm supposed to understand that? No.
But I just observe that I am a self, and I have a subjective experience of being a self in a place that I don't have full comprehension of. Now, how do we analyze the environment?
Yeah, right. Full comprehension isn't, who cares? Because every detail isn't really important. I mean, you don't have to count all the hairs on the top of your foot to say, oh, I don't know exactly how many hairs are on the top of your foot, so therefore I am totally ignorant of what life is on Earth. But, so, I mean, clearly, in my opinion, the information, the need to know stuff is accessible. It's right in your face, okay? Dog, pig, equal sign, substantially, not hard to do. Don't harm dog, torture, kill pig. No good reason except my subjective experience says I wanty. Yum yum, bacon yum yum. And that's as good as you can do, and you're going to talk about you're doing philosophy? Yeesh.
We're in. What are the ways that we perceive? What are the lenses that we look at our environment through? Well, the most primary, basic, important, foundational, I don't know how many other words I can use for that, but really, really super important and foundational and basic kind of psychological phenomena in this sense is hostility and friendliness. We interpret the world in terms of what is...
Well, I mean, it's almost a silly way to put things, right? I mean, yes, there's good and bad. There's stuff that tastes good, stuff that tastes bad. There's comfortable, uncomfortable. That you're just doing another way of describing the same thing, attraction and repulsion. And I guess I would argue that, like in physics, there's really no attraction. There's just push. There's just repulsions. And they can either, and you know, every pull is just some way of pushing in some different kind of way. And everything you want because you're being driven, pushed. Not because it's pulled you.
Hostile towards me and what is friendly towards me, what is good for me and what's bad for me, what's trying to help me stay alive basically, and what's trying to kill me. And you notice this with babies. It's one of the first lenses that they put over the world. If you put them with someone they don't trust,
yeah, so it's like a lizard. So you're just talking about lizard mechanisms inside of us, our visceral reflexes, which obviously are totally get people into huge amounts of trouble in terms of the you know, in the context of bigotries and other nonsense that is just demonstrated how corrosive it is to anything good ever happening. So yeah, we have to live a more, you can't live based on this silly aesthetics, which subjective visceral aesthetics is not going to, that you're just a lizard then. You might as well just throw all those extra brain cells, just slice it off and, you know, put it in the microwave because you're done.
It's hostile, like their alarm systems go off. They sense a kind of hostility in the other person and they don't trust it and they let you know. So one of the first lenses that a baby puts over their kind of perception of the world is this hostility and friendliness dynamic. If they hear a loud noise, it's bang, what was that? What was that? They know that there are hostile entities and objects out in the world, and they know that there are friendly objects and entities like the mother and stuff that they will go towards when they feel threatened. So hostility and friendliness, it's the basis of just about everything. Now, think about...
whatever. So, yeah, this is kind of a turn-off, right? I mean, philosophy through the eyes of infant maturation, you know, it's just so crude, and the value can be gleaned out of it. And the important part isn't so much what the baby's experiencing, but how the environment has been molded to create a sense of what is trustable, and in the sense that I think most people end up in some way or another, the fucking assholes they become is because of that bad training, those bad associations, where, you know, they accept excuses and, you know, start thinking it's funny. You know, it's funny watching the little critters die, you know, on the stove.
If I was to just drop you in a completely alien environment that you didn't understand, you'd never been to before, you had no comprehension of how the laws of physics work in this environment, it's just baffling to you. What would be one of your first impulses? it would be, okay, I'm confused, I'm disoriented, what's going on? You'd start to get a bit of a map of what's going on, and it would be, right, what is threatening me in here? What in here might threaten me? What might be detrimental to my...
No, sorry, you just don't do that much thinking. You'll either feel comfortable or uncomfortable, and then you'll start making associations between whatever the conditions were that surrounded the comfortable feeling, whatever the conditions were surrounding the uncomfortable feeling. And that's all you're going to feel. You're going to feel sick or happy or something, and it's going to be because something in the environment is causing that by your judgment. You're not going to think of some internal problem you're having. You're going to blame it on something external. If you're a dumb baby.
My experience in this place, you're looking for threats. And second to that, what is it in this environment that can help me to gain an understanding of that environment? And what does it mean to gain an understanding of your environment? It means to create order in your environment. That's what order is. So out of all this chaos, we're essentially putting down order in your...
Yeah, so again, it's this control thing. If I change the environment into what I need it to be, then that's the truth. It's how does it serve me, not how do I serve what might be important elements in the environment. So again, it's just this whole me first thing is just ignorant. The first thing you have to assess is, am I stepping on something that goes ouch when they get stepped on? I just can't hear it. Are the hoo-hoobies, in all the little dust balls? Do I have to be worried about something? But, you're not even thinking about that.
Environment. And that is, as far as I can tell, the reason we have this kind of compulsion to put down order into our environment and to create order in our environment is because we can detect...
No, we're just making moats for the bad feelings. We're just creating, we're trying to fight the stuff that hurts us, that we've associated with harm, we've had bad experiences with, and we're making moats and filling it with crocodiles and say, crocodiles, go eat the bad thing. Go kill the bad thing that's coming for me. We're just creating our suits of armor, and some weapons, so we can fight off something that's going to degrade our feelings. Take an arm off or something. It's always life is trying, the real game from the subjective perspective is just one of trying to maintain what you have. Most people, I'd say, aren't trying to gain so much as they are trying to preserve.
Hostility much easier when it's against the kind of background of order. If we see an entity or an object or something that is in the context of chaos, we don't have an understanding of it, we don't have a perception of it, we can't tell whether it's friendly or...
So again, what's the context for that? I mean, when when the purple elephants come stomping on your front walk, you're making a metaphor that I just can't relate to at all. What's this chaos that's coming for me? What part of existence is this thing that I can't understand that's coming for me? It seems like it's all quite labelable and categorable. You're going to put all kinds of shit in categories and label things and understand why they exist and why you're stuck in this fucking shithole. Is because, people did shitty philosophy. Pretty much.
Hostile. We can't tell what's going on. We're right on that until we find out what's going on. So this capacity or this need or preference to create order seems to come out of a fear of hostility and a kind of preemptive attack on hostility, or a preemptive defense rather against hostility. Now when you consider your...
So, this is just kind of like you're talking about word games or semantics or something. I mean, this seems like an awful strangled way of describing what the battle is. It's not, things don't have to be hostile to you in the sense that they're not doing anything wrong for you to find it obnoxious. Somebody can be playing music that they love and I hate. I don't really have a right to spear that. I don't have a right to, I'm gonna, cut their brake cables. So I don't have to listen to their music anymore because they don't have a right to like music. They have to like what I like. I mean, that stems from what you're claiming as some sort of logic, but it's obviously, for anybody a little bit sophisticated, that's not logical.
Your experience of the world, like nature, being out, outside and outdoors and stuff like that. Like if you look at it now, it's like silent out here. What's your experience of nature? Okay, because in between friendliness and hostility, there's a kind of indifference, right? So is nature friendly to you, hostile to you, or indifferent?
Well, it's a kind of a pointless thing to say, right? Because obviously everybody experiences wonderful parts of nature, like naked girl in the warm sun and the friendly daisies, and well, nature's great. Mosquitoes, smelly bogs with all kinds of flies and shit. I mean, just bears. I have to worry about bears here. It's a mixed experience. Just as our real life, natural life is a mixed experience. Some experiences are really pleasant and some natural experiences are really unpleasant. You can't just label the whole thing fun house. You really can't. Rationally.
Different to you. Well, if I was to look at nature from here, it's kind of indifferent to me. There's ways that you can perceive nature as being hostile. Obviously, it's full of threats. And not only that, but nature is silent. Nature doesn't speak to you. If I scream out now for help from nature, it ignores me. So is that hostile? Like, you've got to think not how the world is, but how your brain is perceiving the world to be.
Yes, well, again, I think your theory that people's brains are expecting, nature to be a person and come to the rescue, or there's somehow nature knows how to speak English or any of that crap. I don't think most people waste too much neural energy on any expectations like that.
And it's the same with processing childhood trauma. You've not got to think about how it actually was when you were a kid. You've got to think about how you perceived it to be when you were a kid.
Yes, well, that's the one. So you got that one right. That's exactly right. It just doesn't matter whether. Let's see how to say this. Your subjective experience, whether it's the thing's fault or not. Like you could fall down and get a terrible bump on your head or something, walking through the Magic Castle at Disneyland, and then the rest of the day you have a migraine headache. So Disneyland sucks because you had a migraine headache, not because Disneyland sucks. And so you end up going to associate your personal experience, which had nothing really to do with Disneyland, it had to do with the asshole who left the styrofoam cup on the ground or something. Yeah. So you end up with associations that are, I'm not going to say inappropriate, but they're not mathematically precise in that the events aren't necessarily fairly judged by your subjective experiences. And then those things can be, people can have lasting trauma from that bad one experience when it was a 1 in a million bad experience. And if they had had a common experience, then they would be more normalized.
Right, that's the space you've got to put yourself back in to grieve that trauma. And speaking of this kind of capacity to create order and stuff like this hostility and friendliness and childhood trauma and stuff like that, well, what is childhood trauma and what's wrong with the world? Right.
Well, see, that's a good subject. I'm just saying the idea of what happens to us in terms of maturation and how it glibs us or how it paranoids us. So you could say, I could argue there's these different emotional themes that people are living by. and but it get kind of complicated getting into all that. And the fact that there's people who are too sensitive, and then there's people who are way too insensitive. That we can know for sure. Now, where the right amount of sensitivity is, that's the tricky one. And I'd almost argue the too sensitive ones, maybe there's no, maybe the truth is that we haven't even realized the scale of where appropriate trauma should be, in the sense of in recognizing the scale of the Freddy's nightmare that we're part of. We think it's okay because it's psychedelic colors. You could take the Freddy Nightmares movies and you could repixelate them, change them visually, and without the context of the story and the rest of it, you could try to make that not horrible. The stuff being portrayed, the fear being exploited, and you could make it all kind of into pastel colors, and you could do certain things to trick yourself into thinking it's all okay. And that I would argue that's our psychosis, is that we don't see things in their true color, red.
Right? Childhood trauma is basically where your parents are hostile towards you, okay? But because you have to, as a child, you have to believe, you have to idealize your parents. You have to believe that your parents are friendly towards you and are good people. What happens when you idealize them, if they are hostile towards you, is not only that you confuse hostility for friendliness, right? But you don't actually have a sense of what friendliness is. And hostility and friendliness are just the kind of psychological phenomena.
Yeah, well, whatever. It's all kind of, baby talk or something. It just sounds a little silly, to talk about it in those terms. But obviously, you can have a dualism. You can have a mixture of positive and negative experience that leaves you uncertain, how to feel.
Behavior that takes place. If you look at the emotions that are behind it, the emotions that produce that behavior, it's love and hate, right? People say that love and fear are the opposites, and everything is about love and fear. No. Fear is a mechanism that your brain has devised to protect you from hostility, okay, to foresee hostility coming and avoid it, right? So fear isn't the opposite of friendliness, which is love, Fear isn't the opposite of love. Hate is the opposite of love.
Well, whatever. Friendliness, love. Again, these are things of addiction, frankly. Most of the times I was in love, it was because it was feeding an addiction, an addiction to aesthetics, mostly. And, just it's not a positive mechanism, addiction. So again, it's a subject you don't want to talk about, but to me that's the context of this subjective experience. Is our subjective experience is polluted by these very negative biological and traditional addictions.
It's always, I've never understood why people say, oh, fear and love. Of course, it's love and hate. Love is being really, intimate, really friendly towards someone, really caring about someone. Hate is the absolute opposite. It's really wanting to hurt someone. It's really fucking, just hating someone. And I don't think that the problem with the world is necessarily an overabundance of hostility and hatred, right? Because that's how psychology normally sees things. It's like people...
Well, I think it's kind of obvious that it is because of the very thing I was talking about, the fact that we are addicted. And we have our own definitions of good music and pretty woman and blah, blah, blah. And that's how we get into all these conflicts with people viscerally, is because their world is fatty land or something, or their world is smelly, or their world is some other thing that you're just, hey, I can't relate to, your world. And that just rolls into hostility because we don't find each other's odors tolerable.
People are too bad. There's too much hatred. There's too much hostility. Let's try and fix that. I don't see it necessarily from that perspective. I think we're more than well versed in hostility and hatred. We've experienced more than enough of that as children, and more than enough of that just as adults in the world. More than enough of that from nature. You know, you're constantly subject to the laws of entropy, and you're constantly getting sick, and you're constantly falling over, and, you know, cutting your hands and stuff like this. Like, nature is a bit of a prick to you. So I don't think it's like we don't have any comprehension of hostility, and we don't understand suffering and all this sort of stuff. I think we have a perfect understanding of.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd say no. It's far short, because we're behaving like ignorant animals, as if we're like a crocodile and we can pretend we're ignorant. I didn't know that I was torturing the animal by sticking my teeth in it and then twisting it and turning it underwater and suffocating it, and I didn't know that was unpleasant for the animal. We don't have those arguments to make, but we're pretending we do. Well, I didn't know. Yeah, you did. You just didn't. You just said it's not convenient. It's an inconvenient truth, and it got thrown in that bucket.
Of all of these things, I think if you go deep enough, you can really wrap your head around what's going on there. I think the problem is not that we don't understand hatred and hostility. We know that way too well. I think the problem is that we don't understand love. We don't understand what friendliness is. Because a lot of the time...
Yeah, because a lot of the time it's just usury. It's just I want, I take. And you find some, bullshit. Roses and candy. You find a bribery. I'll go through the motions, the payment to get what I want. That's all it is. It's just purchase. And most of the time it's purchase through exploitation.
We didn't get that as children. And that's really what processing your childhood trauma is about for a lot of people. There are exceptions, of course, but for a lot of people it's just the realization that your parents didn't love you. Of course it's that simple. Your parents just didn't love you. And so much of that transformation of ideal...
the truth was that your parents, had an idea like puppy kitten thing, and they didn't want to deal with I'm making a cat. There's no, it's a little duck, and they're just not thinking, oh, I'm making a full-grown duck that will live in the world. There's no recognition of what the project was. The project was entertain me. Give me something to motivate me and involve me and keep me on board. But that's all it is. It's a kind of, and then there's the whole ego part of it. People had kids because they think they need to, or grandma's begging for a grandchild to whatever, pinch in the cheek or some bullshit. So that's a good enough reason. Grandma needs to pinch something. This is just completely irrational behavior, this farting out of conscious beings for your entertainment, or to give grandmother something to pinch. Silly. There can't have been any thought that went into it, because if you have any thought going into it, any sense of love is going to be destroyed by the terror that you're committed yourself to, the incredible weight of the responsibility you now have for all the harm that happens to that individual that you've put on this tightrope. You've shoved it on a tightrope, for fuck's sake. And how can you do that glibly and be rational? How can you just pretend that isn't a huge thing to do to something? To pluck it out of the ether and put it on the tightrope. I mean, that's a hell of a fucking thing to do. And, You're telling me there's some way to be rationally glib, or to have some friendly feeling, about the realization that you're now responsible for its capacity to stay on that rope. It's silly.
Is in your parents and move into a place of where you at least have a better understanding of what was really going on, depending on wherever that leads you. That transition.
Yeah, somewhere in the process, your parents wake up to the fact that, holy shit, what have I stepped into? And then you, as the child, end up feeling their discomfort, and the fact that they're kind of shutting themselves off from it, because they need to run away from that sense of responsibility. And you can kind of see that in the sense of the parental detachment from their obligations to pay attention to what's happening to their kids.
And there's always one of saying, hold on, there was more hostility there than I realised. And that hostility I had normalised as friendliness, because I assumed it was friendliness. It came from my parents. You just make that assumption as it is. And now my template for what is friendly is actually, when I really uncover it and when I really look at it, is actually hostility.
Yeah, I just think that's psychobabble, to tell you the truth. It might be true for some kind of psychotic killers or something where they've gotten it all backwards somehow, and they're sadomasochists or something, and they get off on violence and failure and pain and suffering and all that stuff, and seeing it in others and imagining it happening to themselves or something. I don't know. But I just, I think that's a brain way lost. It's not going to be, you're not going to educate it with a video. So that's going to take a lot of retraining of the psychology to fix that one.
And I think this is a large part of what picking up on red flags is. I was talking to Blue the other day about red flags, and I think that's really what it is you have this, you're in this meta space of chaos, right? You've created a certain amount of order, okay, and you believe that the people that you've let into that space are friendly, right? They're part of that order. Because if you've established them as friendly, you can relax your defenses around them. So pretty much all of your brain is wrapped around this detection of threat and hostility. And there's another half of it that's wrapped around love and friendliness and sort of togetherness and all this.
Yeah, well, whatever. I say most of that is bullshit. So again, you can say people have those motivations, but most of it's through some sort of usury. They give to gain something in the future. That's all strings attached. There's all kinds of obligatory, oh, go send her a fruitcake. You get some thing on Christmas, you got too much of this and too much of that, and so you repackage the gifts and send them to somebody else as a sort of token of, yeah, well, maybe they'll, when I need them, they'll show up. And it's just feeding dependencies and fear. And so, to call this friendliness, the friendliness of being used by other people, oh, gee, it's just such a warm, glowy feeling you can get about that.
So, what's happening when you're detecting red flags is you have this environment of order that you've created, right? And that's just really, in your mind, you have an understanding of that meta space, which really is never order or chaos. It's just this meta space.
Yeah, well, that's not true either. So I don't know, this meta space. Now you're still sitting here with the uncertainty every day about what's going to go wrong, and how do I keep this boat ship-shape enough to take the storms.
Your understanding of that is that it's orderly, that there's no threat there. Okay. And then when you get a red flag come up, when someone says something that just irks part of you, that just tweaks a little part of you, and you just think, wait a minute, that's not normal. What that is your threat detection parts of your brain, the threat detection part of your mind, locking onto something that...
Yeah, well, that's a little bit A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, okay, yeah. But anyway, probably enough, almost an hour, so, well, it will be an hour, but once I do my wrap-up here, so, sufficient. Probably should listen to the rest if there's a punchline, but whatever. So it's OGM Menzen. I don't know what that means, but whatever. And nice enough fellow, but yeah, so like I said, if there's somewhere in this bullshit a rationalization for doing this stupid act, you know, creating another bomb ready to explode, you know, and think you're a competent, you know, bomb disposal guy or something. Oh yeah, I'm going to push the right buttons on this thing. Good luck, asshole. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get. You know, it's just odds are against it anyway. Let's just put it that way. Very few parents get what they thought they were going to get. So anyway, until next time and such and so forth and whatnot.